Hey everybody, welcome to TV Recap. I'm Lance. I'm joined today by my friend Kevin.
Hello.
And this is our first episode of Binge Watch. It's a series where over the past month we pick one season of a TV show to watch, and we're going to discuss that season in its entirety. For this first one, we're going to be discussing season 1 of The Shield. Now, first to start, I just want to give an idea of the pedigree of the show. So, the show was created by Sean Ryan. Previously, before the show, he did Nash Bridges and Angel, so quite a different change in
I did
tone.
like Nash Bridges when I was 14 years old and didn't have good taste.
One of the head writers was Sean Ryan, and then also Kurt Sutter, who this was his first big break, but then he went on to be known as the creator of Sons of Anarchy, and now currently The Bastard Executioner, which I have not seen, so I can't speak to its quality, but Sons of Anarchy I thought was a fantastic show. As far as the stars of the show, or at least in season 1, we have a pretty good ensemble cast. You have Michael Chiklis, Walton Goggins, Benito Martinez, Jay Carnes, CCH Pounder, Kenny Johnson, Catherine Dent, Michael Jace, and David Reese-Snell. That covers about 67% of the main cast and a bunch of other bit players. And the interesting thing about the show is I forgot how old it was. It premiered on March 12th, 2002.
Yes.
So,
I was prepared. I've rewatched episode or seasons of 24, which came out in 2001. And so,
right.
And I remember being jarred looking back at like just cell phone technology. And
Yeah.
so I was prepared to see like, oh, that's right, people had flip phones.
Yeah, it's really good to bring it up because that's actually one of the points I want to talk about a little bit later. Now, just in terms of before we get into the actual plot of the show, I kind of want to discuss kind of the impact of the show because we originally picked this show because we both thought like, hey, this is a show we enjoy. We'll at least enjoy watching it and going back and testing out this idea of binge watching. But it was kind of interesting watching the show and some things kind of hit me. First, the show premiered only 6 months after 9/11. Which you kind of get about halfway through the show when one character makes a mention of people flying planes into buildings. And you realize they had to write that pretty much right after it happened.
Yeah.
For when it was in the show. So the thing I thought was interesting about it is because at the time, as a country, the whole attitude was joining together, getting over the travesty of that attack. And everybody was all on board with the military and the police and the firefighters and everything. And this was a show about how shitty cops are.
It's definitely a show about the grayness of humanity.
Yeah.
That there is, even in the what appears to be the most vile of people, there are. I mean, not some of the people they're catching, but in this anti-hero, you see him do heinous things, and you're like, oh, I hate this guy, and then you see him do very redeeming things as well.
Yeah, that's true. And I say going back to the whole anti-hero thing, which I think is a really good term for it, the really interesting thing is you start kind of thinking like, okay, maybe this guy's alright, maybe there's another side to this story. And by the end of the pilot, he kills another cop.
Yes.
It's very clear this is not the guy you want to root for, but something about it keeps you rooting for him. Whether it's, I don't know if it's as much as like the good qualities of the character or it's just how well the story is written and how well it works as a story.
Well, he definitely does things that are completely self-serving. I mean, the murder of the cop is solely a precaution to cover his own ass. His ass isn't even on the line. It's not like it's me or him or I'm going to jail or I need to kill him. It's like he may be a problem for me.
Yeah.
It's completely selfish. And then he does other things that are self-serving, but not solely selfish, with the way that he manipulates some of the crime to his benefit so that he can put money in his pocket for his family or for his retirement, or he lets someone off on something so that he can use them later, whether for some reason that he hasn't determined yet.
Yeah, but I think the important thing to know about that is he always does seem to want to do right in the majority sense of the term. He's always trying to catch the killers or the bad drug dealers or the people that won't work with him and play by the rules.
Yes.
Albeit the rules are a little bit skewed.
He definitely, while he may have some methods that aren't necessarily kosher, but he definitely, I wouldn't say he's lost the reason he became a cop.
Right. That's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely a corrupt cop, but he definitely still is doing the things he's doing mostly to get the streets safer.
Yes, and it's I think that part is really kind of shown the other side of the coin of with Captain Acevedo, because you identify him as this is a guy that wants to do things by the rules. He wants to do things right, and then a couple episodes in, you find out, but it's really just so he can get himself elected to city council.
Yes, and where he's playing by all the rules, it seems everything he does is self-serving.
Yeah, even though he's doing the right thing.
He's not doing the right thing because it's the right thing. He's doing the right thing so he can get the press or the headline.
Right, exactly. It shows, like you said, it's very morally gray. And yeah, I don't think there's one good person on that show. Not entirely.
I want to say Lem, but I know that's not true.
you want to say Lem because he seems like the nicest guy. I mean, like he cares for the chickens in the cockfighting episode and things like that. But he's still on the strike team.
Exactly. He's still complicit in a great many of things. Yeah. Maybe not in everything, but in a great many things.
Yeah, and I think like the closest you get to pure good is Claudette.
Yes.
But even then, she has her own issues with prejudices and just like things. And when things need to go a little bit outside the lines, when she's partnered up with Vic looking for those meth dealers, she just rolls with it. She's just fine with it. So, she even has tinges of the gray.
Well, and I think there is no person, let alone on the show, in real life that doesn't have morally questionable thoughts or decisions or...
That's true. that is very, very much true.
Except for our mothers.
Yeah, exactly. We love you, Mom. The couple other things I want to find out that I thought were interesting about the show, and I was just kind of looking into the history of the show. Like I said, it's about the first show I could find about bad cops or this whole morally gray thing. The closest I could find in its timeline is The Wire from HBO, which premiered in 2002, but it was the fall of 2002, I think. Now that I say that, I wish I had double-checked before we started recording. But after that, every other show that's close to it is at least 2 years after The Shield. So,
well, and HBO is a completely different animal than basic cable in the early 2000s.
Yeah, and not only is this the first show to kind of tackle the subject matter, this was FX's first original drama.
Yeah.
And so
I remember that.
It could very easily measure that this was the show that kind of put FX on the map. So this was not only a game-changing show for television and how serialized dramas are portrayed, but it put a network on the spot. It followed things, like it set the road for things like Nip Tuck and Sons of Anarchy and other shows, Damages with Navos and all those other FX shows that came before it. Or not before it, after it.
Yes.
That's how first.
Well, I mean, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia probably wouldn't have found a home if...
That's very true.
Yeah.
If you don't have a network that's willing to
completely different type of show, but it wouldn't have found a home if FX hadn't been established.
Yeah, and it definitely not only established it, but I think they kind of showed themselves like, we're the network that will take a chance on a weird concept or something that may not land, but they seem to focus on stuff that is going to be a quality show.
Well, and I think it also kind of set a template. Template may not be the right word, but kind of showed AMC, this can work.
Right.
So, and then because AMC probably didn't start till like 2005.
Yeah, Breaking Bad was about 2005, 2006. And
so, I mean, that kind of laid the groundwork for these other networks to come out with great TV as well.
Yeah. And then one of the other things I thought was interesting about the show is, based on my memory, and this is a hard thing to Google search, it's one of the first shows I remember that actually brought in movie stars for major parts on a TV show. Mm-hmm. Before this show, you would ever imagine seeing Glenn Close or Forrest Whitaker doing a show on cable as opposed to a movie.
That's a good point. I guess I don't have a memory of.
Yeah, and again, that's later in the seasons after the show had established itself and shown that it was a good story and wasn't just your standard medical or legal or police procedural shows. But it definitely laid the groundwork to get shows like that on the air and to get a lot of those big actors back into cable and back into shows to explore things. Like, would you have ever seen Bryan Cranston do a Breaking Bad without The Shield?
Well, Bryan
I
Cranston
guess
was a TV guy. That's.
I guess, yeah.
Your point still stands.
He's awesome now, so it is.
Yeah.
Okay, so that kind of lays out kind of like the pedigree of the show and where things are. So let's actually get into the plot of the show.
Okay.
Now, we've kind of gotten into it a little bit, but obviously this show is called Binge Watch. If you haven't seen all of season 1 of The Shield, we're going to start talking about some plot. We're going to ruin things for you. So if you haven't seen it, you definitely should watch it. It is available on Hulu, all 7 seasons. We highly encourage you to go watch it because I think we both enjoy the show.
Yes, very much so.
Yes, so go check that out. We're going to speak in generalities because we'd probably be here all night if we talked about every
13 hours of television.
Yes, but you have been warned. Okay, so first, what is your overall impression of season 1? How did you feel about it just as a story, as a bit of TV?
Some of this may be colored by the fact that I've seen all 7 episodes, but I was surprised with how much happens in season 1. I guess in my memory, those plot lines and some of the seeds of what happened in season 2 and 3 are set here,
right?
And that I didn't necessarily remember that stuff happening that early on. Overall, I thought it was a fantastic season of television. The writers do a really good job of taking you kind of on a roller coaster for what you feel about various characters. You despise Vic, and then you're kind of cheering for him, and then you feel bad for him, and then or with Claudette, you kind of think she's this moral superiority, but then you see she has these troubled relationships with her father and her daughter, or with Dutch. You feel like you recognize that he's a really good cop and he's really smart, but he's also kind of an arrogant asshole, so you kind of like him, and then he busts his ass and pulls something out of his ass to catch this guy that nobody else could have caught.
Yeah.
And I guess my one critique of the characters overall would be I felt like Shane was a little one-dimensional.
Really?
I didn't remember him being that just rough and no depth. Like I feel in later seasons he does have depth and he has some nuance to him. But I feel like there was the argument or the physical altercation he gets in with that basketball player,
right? Or
when they go on a bus at one point, or not a bus, but they're looking for somebody, and he ends up running from like just a guy on the street and like peeing on him.
Yeah.
And I felt like there was no real depth to. I mean, there was a little depth when he was struggling with what they did in the first episode, but. Other than that, I felt like it was fairly one-dimensional.
Yeah, see, I was going to jump in on that a little bit because I actually thought they kind of did a good job on. He had 2 kind of highs as a character at the start and end of the season, and that low in the middle. Mm-hmm. Where at the start, he did a really good job of showing how much he's dedicated to Vic, and he's a team player, but what they did to Terry just tore him up.
Yes.
But then, he goes into this idea on fights over a basketball player because he's pissed off about how much money he makes, how much of a douchebag this NBA star is, which, surprise, pro athletes are douchebags. And then, he calls a guy, I can't remember what racial slur he says, but I'm certainly not going to say it.
We're not gonna throw out 3 and guess.
No, exactly. And then he's on the guy in the street, but then, you get to the cockfighting episode, well, he's still kind of a scumbag because he's trying to violate the law by getting a bounty on some guy that's one in Mexico. He starts caring about these chickens, and the one he's rooting for dies, and he feels sad, and then they toss him in a fire, and he has that look of just like somebody just kicked his puppy. And so, I thought they kind of lost it in the middle, but brought it back at the end.
Okay, that's fair assessment.
I thought it was very tightly written. I don't think there was any episodes that seemed like they were lull episodes. Everything kind of tied together nicely, and it moved the plot along successfully, I thought.
Okay.
The only thing I think that the show kind of missed the bar on was, and again, it's an ensemble cast. It's hard to flesh out everybody, but I feel like we never got to know Ronnie.
I feel like 7 seasons in, you never get to know Ronnie.
That's sort of the thing, and maybe they couldn't figure out anything interesting to do with him, but I had to go back and I actually watched the pilot twice. He says nothing in the pilot, and they show his face once.
Yeah.
And he's a member of the 4-man strike team this whole show's kind of based on.
Yeah.
And he has a couple scenes on episode 9 or 10, and then, that's it. So, again, I'm not expecting them to find time for everybody, because then you'd lose out on some of the stuff of the story of Julian's struggle with his homosexuality.
Yeah.
Or You lose a little bit on the idea about Danny just trying to struggle this whole idea of like, she's just a cop. She's training this guy and he doesn't know who he is.
Or just the struggle of being a woman cop.
Yeah, the whole struggle of being a woman cop and the whole issue of she obviously used to, have sex with Vic and she kind of cut that off. We get a hint of that in the pilot. You lose a lot of those little nuances when you flesh out other characters.
Yeah.
But it felt weird to me that one of these core members that needs to be brought down and stopped is never focused on.
Well, and I guess the other thing I'll say, talking about or the lack of lull episodes, which is a good thing, is that I feel like with a lot of these other serialized dramas, you kind of have non sequitur episodes. Like even in shows like Firefly, which is one of my favorite shows of all time, I feel like there's episodes where they just kind of like, oh, here's the adventure for today, but it's not necessarily moving the story forward in any way. And not that there's not episodes because there's not like an overall story. It's an overall character development. I felt like every episode I was engrossed in, and I didn't feel like there was any filler episodes.
Right. Yeah, and like I say, it's like it may not have moved along the whole like Acevedo trying to bring down the Strike Team plot, or the idea about all of the other issues that they focused, Julian's sexuality or Dutch and Claudette's partnership or anything. But every episode, you got to know a little more about the characters. Mm. Maybe it was not so much about some, but you would learn a lot about Dutch in an episode. And I felt that's what keeps people engrossed, and that's what makes it a successfully written show, because it kind of moved everything along, if not from a story point and a pieces on a board point, but from the emotional level, which is where you have to get your connection to be a good show.
Have you rewatched this at all since it aired?
I have not. I have not rewatched it since it aired.
I don't think I had either. I was trying to think about that, and I don't think I'd seen this since it was on. Yeah, 2002.
It was weird how much I slipped back into the stuff I was familiar with. Because I think we both watched it when it first came out, or maybe a year or two after.
I probably watched it when it first came out because there was no such thing as DVR in 2002 or Netflix or
Hulu. That's true. But yeah, it was odd how many individual scenes, like the opening scene of the Strike Team chasing down that drug dealer through like the Mexican market and finding the bag.
To be fair, that probably happens in like 5 seasons.
That's true, but only one of them ends with them ripping a bag of drugs duct taped to a guy's ball sack off. So, again, that's probably pretty memorable. Yeah. But it's like, I almost remember that shot for shot. Yeah. And I think that's one of my favorite parts of the whole show, is it introduced those characters and that mindset of the whole show perfectly. Mm-hmm. So which brings me to a nice next point. What was your favorite part of the story?
My favorite part of the story,
did you, I guess, to kind of help clarify, I guess I'm looking for, did you have a favorite story arc?
Okay, that's
nice. It's not picking out like an individual scene.
Yeah. I think my favorite story arc is probably, Dutch and Claudette's partnership.
Okay.
I'm probably branching a little bit into future seasons as well, but just their play off of each other. And it's almost like Dutch and Claudette are an episode of Law and Order. And then there's insanity going on around them. Because it's like they're the partnership, and they're Dun, Ice-T, and whoever talking to each other. And then the Strike Team is going on around them, and they're also having to deal with this insanity that you never see on Law and Order.
The show is what happens if Law and Order turns the cameras in 90 degrees.
Exactly.
And you're like, wait, what the hell?
So I would say I like that there is kind of I'll say a basis in reality, not a basis in reality, but like a grounding of they're still doing regular cop work. It's not a drug bust every day. It's not a huge high profile thing that happens constantly kind of thing.
Yeah. Sometimes they're just out looking for stolen jewelry. Yeah. I really enjoy that relationship too. For me, I think my favorite part of the story is one of those things like you don't realize it's happening until it hits the last 2 episodes of the show. I think my favorite part of the whole story and the whole arc is how the neighborhood, that Farmington district, feels about the police in their neighborhood. And it's so subtle and it's so soft that you just get the sense of, okay, things aren't great. There's gangs, there's drugs, there's, poverty, income, there's, gang-on-gang violence. and it builds a little bit, and then you get that little bit of catharsis in episode 5 or 6 when the one lady comes in and goes on her rant about, kids killing each other and planes flying into buildings and everything, and about how they're supposed to be helping us and you're not helping, and that kind of relieves that bit of tension in your mind, I think.
Yeah.
And then you go 4 more episodes, and then all of a sudden it's a riot and cops are getting shot.
Which I couldn't help but see a resonance in what's going on today.
Yeah, it is scary
Yes.
how much that whole mindset of us versus them when it comes to community versus police was. And again, I don't remember anything of that magnitude going on in the country.
It definitely wasn't making national news.
No. Again, there was a lot competing for it with the impending war on terror and the invasion of Afghanistan and Iraq, but
I think some of the stuff that the themes that the writers were going for there was something that, you can look at the early to mid 90s with Rodney King and the riots and stuff like that. So they were kind of playing on or drawing parallels from themes in society that had been there for a long time, and not necessarily that it was going on that instance in 2002, but you just kind of see how. If you, what's the saying about history repeating itself?
Yeah.
If you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so now cover kind of our favorite ideas. What was your least favorite arc or part of the show?
I kind of already touched on that. I remember really enjoying Shane's character, and that was my first real exposure to Walter Goggins as an actor, and I think he's a fantastic actor, and I'll watch just about anything he's in at this point because of how well he plays Shane. But I didn't feel like they hit the peak of Shane as a character in that first season. So I was a little disappointed just because my expectations were high because of how much I love that actor because of this role over 7 seasons.
I gotcha.
Yeah,
and again, it's hard to watch, like when you're revisiting a show, it's hard to look at it like it's brand new.
Yes.
You can't ever do that again.
Yeah.
I think for me, and not because I don't enjoy the storyline, I think it was well done, but the whole Julian personal identity storyline felt really heavy-handed at parts.
Okay.
I think it was great. It makes sense. I was in the military. I understand that mindset. I can understand the general populace looking at it the way it did, especially with how, gay rights were at that time.
Uh-huh.
But there were some times where it was just over the top and almost like, hey, don't forget, black cop, also gay cop.
And I think society as a whole has come a long way in the last 14 years, but it was just 3 years ago that people were making a huge deal about an openly gay NFL player.
Right.
So, as far as we've come, we haven't come that far.
No, I'm not disagreeing. I'm not saying this is despicable.
Uh-huh.
It just felt to me like again, it probably is no surprise. My favorite part is that subtle neighborhood tension building through the whole season. Something that overt and obvious it wore on me a little bit.
Yeah.
Over 13 straight hours over the course of a week.
Yeah.
But again, who knows? Going back, if I would go back to watch it, maybe it won't bother me so much. After I see a couple more seasons of the show where I let it sit for another.
No, I get that.
Okay, so going into, we've talked a little bit about this. Aside from Dutch and Claudette's relationship, does that lend itself to your favorite character on the show?
No, my favorite character's Love. No question.
Okay. Yeah,
no question.
That is the correct answer. So why is Love your favorite character then?
I don't know. You want to be Len's friend.
Yes, you do. To me,
he's so genuine.
Yes.
Even though he's a part of this team that's doing these things, and he's aiding drug dealers or facilitating their ability to do things, and he's not necessarily always squeaky clean. He seems so honest and so genuine in who he is as a person.
Right. He seems most human.
Yeah.
I think undeniably he feels the most empathy.
Yes.
Out of anyone else on that show, including Dutch and Claudette, who have to sit through all the sob stories.
They can't really have. I think they need to harden themselves a little bit. You saw after they caught the serial killer and they got him to confess, and Dutch went out to his car and he just started crying because he had been sitting there for 15 hours with the guy, and the guy was just kind of beating him at his own game, psychoanalyzing him, and you could see the toll it was taking on him. And he kind of has to put up this hard shell and not let that affect him. And then you see like the emotion just drain out of him. Kind of.
Not even that 15 hours, that whole time.
Yeah,
presumably months.
Yeah.
He was working on that one case, and he had to be
nobody
clean and analytical about it. And little girls were getting murdered in the streets.
Well, and he found this pattern, which was not even really a pattern.
No, 4 points.
And nobody, and the only thing is that all the bodies were turned face down.
Yeah.
And nobody even believed him that it was a serial case. So I mean, he had to fight to even get it to be a case.
Yeah, and even if it wasn't, if it turned out to be nothing, everyone would have gone, yeah, figures. I think Lem is easily the favorite character. Do you have a least favorite character?
The easy answer is Aceveda.
Yeah.
I don't like Aceveda just because of what his character does, kind of thing. But I mean, I understand that's what the character is, and it's a necessary foil to Vic. Danny never really did anything for me as a character.
Okay.
At least in this first episode, I don't remember her whole story arc, but
yeah, I mean, everything was pretty much on the nose with her.
Yeah.
I think for me, the worst thing is my least favorite character is Vic when he's talking to his family.
Yeah, when he just won't give them an explanation.
Exactly. It's every time there's a stressful situation, especially towards the end of the season, like, look, I don't need this. Just do what I tell you. And,
just trust me.
I'm like, just tell him that your boss is trying to frame you for murder and might hurt him, and you need to be safe. Just give him a little bit, not to freak him the hell out, but just...
Or give them something completely false. Say, look, we took this drug dealer down, and his gang's out for retribution, and I just want to make sure you're safe. I mean, just lie to him.
Yeah, give him something instead of just a brick wall to beat their head against, which...
Great marital advice. Just lie to him.
Exactly. Perfect. Which I think kind of shows, and at least kind of to me, justifies my viewpoint, because that's what bites him at the end of the season, is he loses his family.
Well, yeah. Yeah, I completely agree with that.
Because it was solely because of his actions. Not because he was a dirty cop, not because he killed people, but because he treated them like shit.
Yeah. Speaking of Vic's family,
yes.
What was your thought on the way that they portrayed autism?
Okay, that for me was really interesting. Because I remembered that something was off about Vic's son. I knew Vic's son needed special classes or a special school or something like that. I forgot it was autism. And for all the viewers out there, so you're in the know, I have a 5-year-old son named Jackson who was diagnosed with autism about 3 years ago. So, hit me right about there. And it was really interesting to me because as little as we know about autism right now, as a whole, going through the whole diagnosis and finding out that we don't really know shit about it. We just know it's a condition and we can kind of describe it by certain behaviors and certain mental tics, and here's how we treat it. The odd thing is how accurate that scene was when when Vic's son Matthew was diagnosed in the show, because that conversation has to be what every autism diagnosis conversation happens. There's always that talk about the doctor, and they talk about the gifts of the child, and there's always that initial reaction. And again, I can't speak for every couple, but I feel that that's it. At least for us, it lined up with the mother was just, oh my God, what does this mean? We need to get on. We need to get on it. And the father, Vic, and then myself was like, all right, enough bullshit. How do we fix this? How do we treat it? I don't need pats on the back. I don't need lectures on how much I need to love my son, because I do love my son. How do we work with this? And it definitely hit home based on its accuracy. Okay. So I thought it was extremely well done. I thought it was handled very well. It wasn't just a
token storyline.
Yes, it wasn't here's the home difficulty story. Yes. And they did a great job of tying it in about Vic's book that Shane kind of teased him with, and you can see Vic just wanting to just fucking put his fist through Shane's face for it, but he can't tell him because that's not something you do right away, and it's not something you tell right away.
Yeah.
And then especially the things that Vic went through for the school of going out of his way to con his way into the school after they got hosed out of it. I'm like, I would have done the same thing, but probably a lot more violent. So I thought that was a great side of the character, great aspect, and part of the other reason why I'm so frustrated with Vic treating his family like shit. I'm like, you have a son that has trouble communicating, and you're being a shithead about communicating.
Yes.
So that kind of was a plot. Now, before we kind of do like a wrap up on the whole thing, was there anything plot-wise that you wanted to touch on or talk about that landed with you?
One of the points I was going to bring up, I already brought up, was the toll that you see Dutch take during that serial killer case.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things that I had no memory of, and it just kind of struck me because you're sitting there and you're watching it, and he's just kind of, I'm not really sure what he was doing. He was baiting the guy, but the guy was analyzing him and just nailing him to a T.
Yeah.
The struggles that he has socially, and you see that through the season when he's trying to go out with Danny and failing miserably, and then this guy's coming in there and just like hitting him right in his pressure point over and over and over again, and he just grits through it, and then he nails the guy, and then you see it just in an avalanche.
Yeah, that was insanely powerful.
Yeah.
And I think not even the fact that the initial cry, but he got like a few seconds into it, realized he was still in the parking lot, put himself back together for appearances, and then it just broke.
Yeah.
And that hit really hard. Now, the one thing I just want to mention as a side effect, it's not really anything to do with the story, but were you ever able to get it out of your head that Rondell Robinson was the original Black Power Ranger?
No, I knew right away.
You just see it, right? You're just like...
Well, in my mind, that actor, after that show, ends up dealing drugs anyway in real life. Because what are you going to do after being the Black Power Ranger? Like, I think Rondell Robinson is playing himself.
You get your resume, you put Black Power Ranger, and then question mark, question mark, question mark. Yeah, it was... Fine acting job, fit the part, it was just... You believed him, but it was just one of those things that like... You're from my childhood. You don't belong here.
Yeah, I just can't be saying the Peak Ranger to come around the corner.
You just expect a weird monster from space just to grow to 40 stories tall. All right, now one last question about it. We kind of mentioned this a little bit. Did the show feel dated? And it's one of those things. I knew it came out in 2002. I know it's 2016 now.
Yeah.
But when I say out loud, the Shield is 14 years old. It doesn't make sense to me. Well,
that's because we're just denying how old we are.
Oh yeah, always.
Yeah. I felt like some of the video quality was really bad.
Yeah.
I felt like you could tell that it wasn't HD in a lot of scenes. And then the only thing that really made it feel dated was the cell phones. But that didn't necessarily take me out of it.
See, I was going to say the same thing, because aside from the fact that the phones were not smartphones, I can't see an idea where they're just like, oh yeah, we'll just Google Maps it.
Yeah.
I didn't find a good analysis, aside from the lack of prevalent computers and email.
But see, I would also make the argument that you could make a budget argument for why they have outdated stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
So you could say they have really shitty computers because they're completely underfunded and the computers are 15 years old.
Yeah.
Or they're issued cell phones. I don't know if cops are issued cell phones, but they're issued cell phones for XYZ and they're given these old models because they're not going to get iPhones when they're in Farmington. Kind of thing. So that didn't take me out of it. Like when I watch 24, it takes me out of it because it's the tip top of anti-terrorism unit, and the fact that they have a flip phone, it's like, oh, that's bullshit.
Yeah. It's like Jack Bauer's in the field with a flip phone, and then they go back into their, CTU, brought to you by Cisco. So I didn't think it felt dated because I think what we kind of talked about throughout this whole conversation is all the characters felt real.
Yes.
There was no stereotypes based on 14 years ago. There was no misunderstanding on characters. It was just real people.
Yes.
So I think that definitely lends it. So if you're worried about watching a show from 2002 and you think it's going to be old and cheesy, don't worry. All right, so final thoughts on The Shield.
The one thing that stuck out to me in just kind of comparing kind of similar characters from different shows and similar era is, I'll go back to 24 again, where Jack Bauer's definitely will do anything to catch the bad guy, and he'll torture people and he'll circumvent the law, but it's always for the greater good. Where Vic will, sometimes he's circumventing things for the greater good, sometimes he's circumventing things for his own benefit.
Gotcha.
So whereas, where Jack Bauer's chaotic good, Vic Mackey's chaotic neutral at times, chaotic good at times, chaotic evil at times. I feel like Jack Bauer always has one moving towards the betterment of society and the saving of America or whatever, where Vic is, his motives change.
I gotcha. That's a good contrast.
Yeah.
I would say my final thoughts are, and we kind of touched on this when we were discussing the whole legacy of the show, but I go back and I watch The Shield, and it's almost reassuring to me how much of the good shows I watch today I see in The Shield.
Okay.
Again, real characters, real life simple issues, convoluted moral choices, and the weirdest thing that stuck out to me was the camera movement.
Okay.
And again, I didn't watch a ton of TV back in 2002, but I felt like every time the action picked up and it was fast moving action, the camera would kind of oppose that by staying still so you could see exactly what's going on. You knew who was chasing who, where they were going, where they were chasing, but as soon as somebody stopped and started talking, the camera's jumping around and it's moving, just to give you that sense of kind of unease, and it's
interesting,
making a little nervous. Like even just they're staying in a street corner and the camera's circling on me, going up and down, in and out, and it just, you never felt calm.
I wonder how many, I know Kurt Sutter is a writer. I wonder how many other writers from that have gone on to do some of the shows we watch now, or how many of the directors have carried on.
That is a really good point.
Into the all the good shows now, the Game of Thrones or the
how many of them ended up on Breaking Bad or The Walking Dead or Mad Men, all those classical, or I can say classical, all those
the good place pedigree.
Yeah, the water cooler shows, the shows that kind of just push past everything else. So. Yeah, I thought this was a good discussion. I think we both highly encourage you to go check out The Shield. It's a good, quick watch because you can't put it down.
And I would encourage you to watch all 7 seasons because there's some shows that drop off, and this show is consistently good through all 7 seasons.
Yeah, and like we said, we kind of mentioned a little bit, if you like big name stars, if you value good acting, this show pulls in Glenn Close, I believe in season 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Forrest Whitaker, guest stars in season 6, does an amazing job as a foil. So, and then you were kind of mentioning the character of Shane goes through an insane journey in this show.
Yes.
When I talked about he had a high and a low and a high in one season, the rest of the 6 seasons, holy shit.
Those are speed bumps versus the peaks and valleys of his character.
Yes, yeah, it is. I think the show is definitely why Walton Goggins got his starring role in Justified.
Yeah,
it'd be the main part of it, and I can't really speak to whether or not it led to him getting his part in Vice Principals on HBO right now, because I get the feeling that's not a gritty cop drama.
No, but I will watch it.
I will watch the hell out of it for Walton Goggins. So now I'm going to do a little bit of shameless plugging because it's coming up on the fall, and dear Christ, I'm going to give myself a heart attack just going over all the stuff I want to do. So first, another show that I love, Kim loves, my wife loves, is The Flash. So we never got around to doing any sort of discussion on season 2 of The Flash, so we're going to hold a recap on season 2 sometime in the next month, and then possibly also do a discussion on expectations or hopes for season 3 or before that comes out. In addition, there will be another binge watch episode coming out at the end of August or early September, show to be determined. So if you have a show you want to binge watch and want to hear us talk about, go ahead and leave a comment down below or tweet me at TV Recap. The Emmys are coming up, the annual awards, Oscars for TV, that have 87,000 categories of shows that I hardly ever watch, but goddammit, this is the internet and I have strong opinions about every one of them. So I'll be doing some sort of Emmy prediction show, and maybe try and find some way to get audience participation involved if anybody's interested. And then finally, fall premieres are coming up. Now, a lot of the big shows are coming back. People love the big shows. People are going to love your Walking Dead. People are going to love all the other fall shows that I watch that aren't The Walking Dead. But I'm going to try, at least for the first couple weeks, to watch as many new premieres as I can to see if I can weed out good versus bad and just do short little episodes during the first couple weeks of late September, early October to let you guys know what's worth your time out there and what is not. And then, so finally, if you know of any hints on shows I should avoid or not, go ahead and tweet me at TV Recap or leave a comment down below. Keep in touch. Let us know what you want us to see and discuss. And we will see you guys next month for another binge watch and then the flood of fall TV shows. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.
Thanks.